Hello and welcome. My name is Simone Talford and this is my adventure series. Throughout this series, I'm going to be meeting a whole range of incredible people. All of them have changed their lives through adventure. But I'm interested in the people behind the achievements. I'll be asking all the questions you want to know the answers to. Things like, how do they do what they do? And why do they keep doing it? How do they fund their lives? And are the sacrifices they make ultimately worth it? Stay tuned and let's go and meet some of the people I'll be talking to in this series. So on today's episode of my adventure series, I'm talking to Sarah Williams. She is the perfect person to kick off this series with. The Guardian has recognised her in the top 10 most inspiring contemporary female adventurers. Not only that, she is also the founder, host and producer of the Tough Girl Challenges podcast. So without further ado, let's meet and talk to Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. That was such a lovely introduction.
I wanted to, when I was writing an introduction, to be like, how can I justify and, explain Sarah, what she does, how she's changed her life through adventure and how she's helping to change other people's lives. Then it just became a sort of quagmire of words like role model, wonderful, inspirational. So instead, I'm just going to read out quickly the introduction for the talk you're giving here tonight. And then you can let me know if you think it's accurate or if you want to add anything. So it says, in 2013, banker Sarah Williams swapped the rat race for grueling challenges, including the 200-mile Marathon des Sables across the Sahara. Now an adventure aficionado, Sarah's new vocation is to motivate and inspire women and girls to challenge themselves. In her weekly Tough Girl podcast, she interviews female adventurers who share their journeys firsthand. From gold medalists to grandmothers, Williams's podcasts from dozens of female adventurers are an inspiration to women of all ages. I would agree with that personally, but I'd also like to just add in that it's won 2 awards now, hasn't it? Listened to in over 174 countries and almost 1 million downloads.
Yes.
Have we reached 1 million yet?
Not yet. 950,000. So yeah. We're getting closer to the million, yeah, which is obviously really exciting for something that I started.
Exciting. Something you started in 2015, it launched, but you started in 2014.
Yeah, 2014. So I left my job in 2013 and basically had no idea like what I wanted to do or how I wanted to spend my life or even know what I want. Oh my God, sorry. But like, I didn't even know what I wanted to do basically. So I ended up traveling for about 18 months and I ended up spending time in Africa. I went and climbed Kilimanjaro. I spent time in Australia.
You say climb Kilimanjaro. Most people just climb Kilimanjaro, but you also wrote a book about how best to climb it, didn't you?
I did, but it was basically because at that point I didn't know if I was wanting to go back into like paid employment. Sure. So I thought if I do go back into a corporation, they're going to say to me, well, Sarah, what have you been doing for the past 18 months? Oh, I've been traveling and having an amazing time. But I thought if I wrote like an ebook, then it was something physical that I could show them. And I also had a lot of people sort of asking me all these questions. Well, how did you climb it? What was it like? How did you prepare? What advice and tips would you have for me? Yeah. And so I just it was something I wanted to do as well. So I did, so I ended up writing the ebook as well, which was fantastic. So.
Amazing, yeah. And then after that, I'm really curious about how you structure your days and how you organise yourself, because you must be incredibly organised. I remember listening to one of your reflections episodes, which is really good, where you have a look back at your year and you sort of said you're waking up in the middle of the night to upload content. So how do you do the adventure thing and the podcast thing and stay sane?
It is a balance and it is a massive challenge, but it's so weird when you do something that you love. It's not sort of stress, it is actually passion. I mean, one of the things that I don't do anymore is I don't set an alarm. I just wake up naturally and I'm so excited to interview these incredible women. I do have to be organized. As you know, I do love technology. I think it's incredible, but I still, work with paper. I have like Excel spreadsheets and tick boxes, because one of the things that I do before I go away on challenges, so for example, before I went away to hike the Appalachian Trail, I actually had to preload 3 months worth of podcast content.
That's what you're doing it on the go as well, aren't you? You're not just, selfie, you're hiking, you're carrying all your equipment, you're doing the adventure and communicating it to a whole tribe of people.
Yeah, but I enjoy it and it is super fun and it's amazing to be able to get that message out there for people. But I one of the things I did or one of the things I've come to realize is about having balance. It is about making sure that, you know, am I getting my exercise in, and am I looking after myself? Because I have burnt myself out previously, like, you know, quite physically from like overtraining, and also from, you know, just being stressed at how much sort of work I have. And so I don't want to bring that same stress that I had from like my previous life back into my life. So I'm very conscious of what I'm doing, how I'm spending my time, and I've also trying very hard to like let go of perfection. I remember my first episode that I released, and I was editing out like every and I was just so paranoid about putting it out there. Whereas now it's almost like it's part of the story, like having those full conversations, or if there's a pause in the conversation, like that almost like helps to build the tension up. So
I think that's what makes you, just from my perspective, so accessible. And the Tough Girl podcast, the community you've created, because these people, for someone like me, they're the nexus to the unreachable. You know, when you hear someone like Kiko Matthews, Paula Radcliffe, Felicity Aston, these incredible women you interview, you get to know where they're making sacrifices, what they find tough, what they find easy, what they don't find so easy. And it's so helpful as a woman trying to think about, how can I be more adventurous? How can I do more?
Well, I was going to say, I think that's the power of the podcast, though. It's having these people's voices, or, you know, hearing from them in their voices about their life, about their challenges, about what they've done, what they found difficult, what they've learned along the way. And when you can actually hear it, and you can hear like that passion and that struggle, or how they overcame that fear, like, I think it just helps people to really understand more about the journey that they've been on, because so often you can see what they've done and what they've achieved, but you don't necessarily understand the sacrifice that has gone on for them to reach that pinnacle of success.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well, sacrifice. Have you had to make a lot of sacrifices? Are you at a place where you think this is success, or?
I am definitely at a place where I think this is success, but that's because I've changed my definition of success, and also the definition of success that society puts on us. So generally, you know, for me growing up, it was success was your job, money, married, kids. That's other people's definition of success.
That's also what we're told, really, isn't it? By society, we're like, oh.
Yeah. Whereas now, I think for me, well, what's my definition of success? And for me, it's like freedom of choice. Do I love what I do? Am I healthy? Am I happy? And when I think about my life, I'm thinking, I am so happy doing what I'm doing. I do have a lot of freedom of choice about where I go and what I do. But this is something that I've been working towards for over 4.5 years now. So it hasn't just come just like that.
You didn't wake up and go, I'm going to be an adventurer and have this awesome podcast that's going to win 2 awards.
Well, I didn't even, when I started the podcast, I didn't know how far it would go, or like whether or not it would be tangible. I mean, the other thing that I think is really, I'm very transparent with my audience as well. You brought up sort of sacrifice as well, and some of the things that I have sacrificed, I don't, it's not necessarily sacrifice, but I was living in London, having this fabulous life. Money wasn't, not an object, but you just don't have to think when you go out. It was just very much, I could just...
I'll go for dinner, go for some drinks, just do it, don't you, on repeat.
Yeah. And then I ended up, after I left, I did have some savings, but I ended up spending my savings, like buying my laptop, which I need for my work, and then investing in the Marathon des Sables, like this big race. Then I ended up moving back in with my parents. I have this, again, I don't want people thinking, oh, poor Sarah, because it's not at all. It's because this is a choice.
Yeah, you've chosen to make these decisions. Yeah. And as you said, your definition of success has changed, and for the better from the sounds of things.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's still a struggle, when you meet friends and family, and the first question is, oh, no, any boyfriend,
That's
marriage.
The stress and the pressure, I imagine.
On it.
But that does sort of lead me into my next question. You always manage to find a way in the podcast to ask really diplomatically, I think, and delicately about the money side of things. And that is really interesting to know, because you want to know about sponsorship. I didn't know about sort of sports sponsorship as much as I do now until recently. And it's this murky sort of underworld, because no one's going to sponsor you, are they, until you're someone to sponsor. There's got to be the why, doesn't it? So for you, how does your life work? How do you fund it?
Yeah, do you know what? This is such a great question. And initially, when I started out, I think people got very confused, and they just thought, because they'd see my life like, oh, she's out in the mountains, or she's at the gym, and I actually had to write this blog post saying, look, this is how I fund my lifestyle. I've moved back in with my parents. I am not paying rent. I'm not paying for food. I'm literally not contributing to any bills. I'm there by the grace of my parents. I'm in a very privileged position to go back to my family.
Great parents,
they're amazing.
Instagram, the smoothie making.
Oh, no, I mean, and also, I can't complain because my mum is just such a caregiver. She loves, looking after me and supporting me, and my dad's the same. So I'm very, very fortunate in that regard. I was still working 2 part-time jobs, so I won this national award, beating companies like BBC and Sky Sports and Manchester City. Won it at the weekend. The following Monday, I'm back washing dishes at the local coffee shop.
Keep it real. I like it.
Yeah, keep it real, because people don't necessarily talk about that, and with sponsorship as well, like. A lot of companies, they will give you gear, so which is great, but actually I need cold hard physical cash to be able to fund my lifestyle. And I sort of shared, look, for 2.5 years I wasn't making any money, and I was actually going into debt for producing the content, because it does cost money to produce.
And it's your time and your energy and your effort and
everything that goes into it. And I heard about this website called Patreon, and I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. And Patreon is basically about supporting small creators. And so patreon.com/toughgirlpodcast. But I started off and I reached out to my audience, and it was so embarrassing because I was like, yeah, there's this website called Patronion. I mispronounce it all the time at the very beginning. And it was embarrassing for me to be like asking for people for money for doing something that I love and get a lot of joy out of. But then I started getting like a few patrons, and it's done in US dollars, and one patron signed up at $5, and another at $5, and another at $2 and $10. And then suddenly I was getting $25 a month, and that was paying for like one of my systems that I needed to use. And that suddenly became this regular source of income for me. And it has, I started that maybe 3.5 years ago, and it has grown. So I've got over like 250 individuals around the world who love my mission and love supporting me. Because one of the things that I try and show as well is I don't just show the glamorous side of adventuring. I show actually many times when I'm not adventuring, I'm lying on my bed, which is where I work, for 12, 15 hours a day with a laptop, just working. And I do all the publicity and the linking and the sharing on like LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and editing everything together. And I think that sort of surprises people because they have no idea about the work that goes in behind the scenes to produce a blog or a podcast or a vlog.
It's really refreshing to see as well someone being so honest, so frank, being like, this is my day, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to work my butt off, I'm going to do this, and I've got a meeting here, then I'm going to edit. It's not just calling up adventurers and saying, hi, should we have a chat? Yeah. So much more than that. And it sounds like you really realised that your time is worth money.
It's difficult and it is difficult because I remember when I started giving like motivational talks, and I initially gave them out for free for schools and like Rotary clubs to build up my experience, etc. And then it got to the point where I suddenly realised, hold on,
I've got to start charging.
I've got to start charging. And I remember one charity, I gave a talk at a charity, and they're like, oh my God, that was absolutely fantastic. You've made such an impact. We'd love for you to come back and do more talks. And obviously we pay you. And my first response was like, oh no, you couldn't possibly, like I can't, and that's quite a bit of a struggle. And I went from being very money driven, from working in banking, working in finance in the city, to almost the other extreme. But I just want to come back to your question about the money side of things, because I asked for feedback from my listeners, and the feedback I get is, Sarah, it's great, but the two big questions are I don't have the time and I don't have the money. And it's really interesting, like how do people fund these adventures and fund these lifestyles? And it's amazing, people can say, actually, do you know what? I work in this job, I saved up my money, I go and do this. For other people, I inherited some money, I did get sponsorship. And it's interesting to be able to hear, like, how are they funding their lifestyle? And it's something that I've definitely become a lot more comfortable with about asking. And I think it's great for other women to hear and to be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Sure, it's whether you're looking for a specific expedition, or are you looking to do your own and sort of get coverage from it and sponsorship. There are, as you say, lots of different avenues.
And also the cost of the expedition. So, I've never rowed an ocean, and I would love to, but the thought of having to raise £100,000 is just, no. But if, I go and walk a Camino, that's a lot cheaper to be able to go and do that. And if you're not, if I'm not flying over to America, it's a lot cheaper. And also, it's very cheap when you're out on the road. So, your £10-15 in the UK will stretch quite far, especially if you're only having to pay for, so on the Appalachian Trail, for example, after I pay for initial flights and insurance and my gear, all I was paying for them was just food and the occasional accommodation as I was going. So it is a balance. I mean, I'm a massive minimalist. People who know me know that I don't go shopping. Like I don't really hate it. I don't buy stuff. I'd much rather have experiences. That's how I want to be living my life. Yeah.
And it's obviously working for you, so you seem very happy. Yeah. I just want to come back really quickly to ask you about, you talked about, overtraining and being overworked. I think I remember you speaking about this with regards to 2015, training for the Marathon des Sables, which for anyone that doesn't know is 6 marathons in 6 days in the Sahara Desert. Bonkers, but well done. You have all my respect for managing that. What made you keep going? You could have given up, I think is what I'm asking. You could have said, I'm doing a podcast, I've done Kilimanjaro, I've done lots of great stuff. What keeps you pushing your limits? Like, keep going.
Well, I think the interesting thing with Marathon des Sables is I just recently started Tough Girl Challenges and had this idea about motivation and inspiration. And I thought, well, if I'm talking the talk and going out and sharing these stories about Kilimanjaro and traveling in Southeast Asia and South America, then I also need to be challenging myself at the same time. And I'd run the London Marathon 5 times at that point. So 26.2 miles is, that's in my comfort zone. I'm totally happy with that. But I also, when I launched Tough Girl Challenges, I wanted to launch with like a bit of a splash. I don't know, something that would make my mark. It's like, actually, do you know what marathons. It does feel as though it's one of those races. I mean, and also it's an expensive race. So, it's an expensive race. It's for a reason, because you're running 6 marathons in 6 days, and they've got multiple.
They let anyone.
Yeah, and it's a safe race to go and do because of the amount of support. You can't really normally sort of go off and go and do these things. And I was very much in the mindset that the more training I do, the better. The more miles, the better. The harder I push myself, go. And it was ridiculous. I was doing like weight training 3 times a week. I was swimming twice a week. I was doing 3 or 4 walks of like 20 mile plus, to get like the time on feet. I was doing like short runs. It was just a very, very intense time period. It was soul destroying, to be honest, because I started having a lot of health problems. Like my hair was starting to fall out. I got like severe acne on my face. My left eye started to deteriorate. So I went back. I had to go back to like the opticians, and they were like, "Yeah, your sight's definitely changed." I had like.
So you almost had to reach your own limitations. Excuse me. Reach your own limitations and then pull yourself back from them.
It wasn't even me pulling it back. It was, I went out for, I'm a big believer in like mind over matter. And I went out for this run, and bearing in mind like the distances I'd been doing in training, I couldn't even get a mile in. So and in my head, my head inside, it was screaming like, come on, you can do this. Keep running. And my whole body was just, no. And I just stopped. And I remember I was sitting on this bench on the promenade along Hoy Lake, and I was just sobbing. I was awful. And I walked home, I took my trainers off, and I just remember crawling into bed and putting the cover over me and just curling up into this ball and just not knowing like what was wrong and what was going on. And I saw like I'd been seeing like multiple doctors, tubes everywhere, like multiple blood tests, trying to figure it out. And a lot of it was like chronic fatigue. I was severely anemic. I had like candida, this sort of overgrowth of like bacteria. And I was in like a really, really difficult place throughout all of sort of 2015. And there was no way that I could do the race, so I had to postpone it to 2016. So I started working with like a naturopath. And I think that's where I really started to learn the balance about like, it's not about all or nothing. It's about actually your health. Like for me, especially when you're self-employed and doing what you do, health has to be the number one priority in my life. And really looking after myself and actually coming to understand it's quality, not quantity. Yes. And started building back up to Marathon des Sables, which I ended up doing in 2016. So my brother lives in Australia, so went over to stay with him in the summer months, and 40-degree heat. I'm like, this is amazing. This is what I love, and running every day. I mean, all I did was like run, eat, sleep, and then out to Morocco.
But I'm determined. I will keep going. So I think I also really wanted to ask you is, if you're someone sitting in your office job, carrying a file like Laura Kennington talks about in her thing, an empty file in an office, hating your life, and you have no clue where to start, other than sort of listening to your great podcast, what could they do? What's the first step to really deciding if you want to pursue a much more adventurous path?
I mean, I think the first thing for me is actually getting some time and space away from like other people, and just even if you can just get somewhere. And what I found incredibly useful, this is very practical, is literally sitting down with a piece of paper and literally writing. I like writing things down. It comes out of me. Whether it's just like random goals or cities or towns I want to visit or experiences that I want to have, I just throw it all down on the paper and see what excites me. But the problem that most people have is when they start doing that, they automatically start thinking, well, I can't do that because that's going to cost.
Yeah, they think of the why not rather than the why.
Exactly. But I think if you can figure out like the key, what drives you, like what inspires you, what motivates you, what gets, you know, that feeling in your stomach where you're literally like the butterflies and the excitement and the nerves, and it's like, well, can I do this? And part of you's like, yes, you can. And the other part's like, no, you can't.
This is bonkers, but my goodness, don't I feel alive?
But exactly, and that's the feeling that you want to be able to get hold of. And then for me, it's about taking action. And I think this is where people, they don't take action. They get overwhelmed by the size of the challenge. And what you need to do is break it down massively to just the first step. I mean, Google is your first step. You know, if it's park runs, where's your closest park run? Where's your closest gym? What is there a swimming pool? Is it exercise? Like, what is it that you can do with where you are? Yeah, and it could just be putting your trainers on if you've got trainers, walking out the door for 10 minutes, coming back. I mean, there are little things that you can be doing. And everybody's in different situations in their life with different roles and responsibilities, whether they've got children or elderly parents. And it is about that balance. And I think, you know, I completely understand that not everybody is going to go and want to run 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert. Sure. But I want them to think, well, what could I do? And that's where it becomes so personally.
I think that's the important thing as well, isn't it? Taking that first step will help you have the confidence for the next steps.
Exactly. Well, especially when you've got a goal, and then you suddenly go out and you achieve it, and you think, okay, well, this is how I achieve that goal. You've got the blueprint to do the next challenge and the next goal, and it can just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can keep challenging yourself and growing and developing. So I think it helps you to come into this place where it's like a positive spiral.
Yes. And then the next thing you know, you're on Tough Girl Podcast.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll let people know in a moment how they can get in touch. But I'd just like to sort of conclude today's interview with a little questionnaire. Now, I haven't told you much about this, have I?
No. You did send me the questions, but I didn't look. I was like, no.
So Marcel Proust was a French essayist novelist.
Oh God, I thought this was going to be a test on that. I was like, oh my God.
And he released this sort of questionnaire at the end of the 19th century. 1895, I think. And it was a series of 35 questions, which he believed when a person answered them would reveal an individual's true nature. But I whittled it down to 10 because, you know, in honor of your time, you're busy. So top 10 questions. So I'll just ask you and then take as long as you want, say what you like. Okay. So first question, what is your idea of perfect happiness?
Oh, perfect happiness. Well, the first thing that sprung into my head was being by the beach and doing yoga, which
You're a yoga instructor as well?
I am a yoga instructor, so I do like yoga. Perfect happiness, I think, is, and the reason that came into my head is it's about the freedom, and it's the joy of being by the water. It's doing exercise. It's being outside. It's being physical. I was in Goa in India earlier this year, and it was just amazing. So I think that's pretty nice. Yeah,
that's a pretty good idea of happiness to me. Next up, what is your greatest fear?
My greatest fear is not doing enough. And sometimes it used to be like not being enough, but I've managed to change that from not being enough, like, you know, for other people. I realize that I am enough. But I suppose my fear would be that when I get to like 80 or 90 and I look back over my life,
I want to make sure you've done as much as possible.
I want to fill it, and I just don't want to have any regrets, and I don't want to look back and have specific regrets where it's like I didn't do that because I was worried about what other people would think of me for doing it.
Well, I say you're having a fair crack at it.
I'm trying to squeeze it in, but when you have like so many challenges and adventures that you want to do,
it just stacks up, doesn't it? The more you do, the more there is to do.
You want to do, and you just think, how am I going to like fit it all in, and but also maintain that balance with like the health and the happiness and not being so extreme that I'm constantly like on the go.
And then number 3, what is the trait you most deplore in yourself?
Maybe like perfectionism, but I feel as though that's again something that I've spent a long time working on, and I
suppose you can still have a little bit of it and not like it about yourself, even though you're getting rid of it.
Yeah, it's. I feel as though like I'm managing to squish that down a lot more and just be like, good enough.
Quieten the voices of self-doubt. I think that's it, managing the voices of self-doubt rather than giving them too much airtime.
Yeah, I think they're definitely like a lot quieter now, and I think just being just more, I suppose, more confident in myself and what I'm doing. Yeah.
And then what is the trait you most applaud in others?
Just not starting, not doing it, just not getting stuff done. I suppose sometimes I think I'm like such a doer, and this is sometimes what I struggle with, is like, I can't understand why people don't, I don't know how to get people to take the first step. Yes. Like that's like, and I understand that there's fears and there's barriers and everything else, but just starting, that's what I just want people to start, because I know once they start, they'll build up this momentum, and I know what the benefits will be once that they do it. And I just, yeah.
I can see it in people. It's a great skill to have, to be fair. On what occasion do you lie?
Not that I don't, like I would never lie, but I would never want to hurt somebody's feelings, I suppose. So that would be, like, you know, if someone serves you a wonderful dinner or something and I didn't like it, I would lie. I'd be like, oh my God, that was lovely. Of course I loved it.
Yeah. So the kindness.
Yeah. Or if, you know, somebody's wearing an outfit but it's not to my particular taste, and I know that they're like worried about.
Do what my sister does. She says, well, if you like it. I'm like,
no, I'd probably still say like, no, you look amazing. But then I'd, you know.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Oh. Probably, you know, it would be tough girl challenges. Yeah, tough girl challenges, and actually growing something so organically from this idea I had in my head. You know, even trying to choose the name and then buying the domain name, and then, you know, I built the whole website myself, and then connecting to social media and figuring out, you know, I didn't do social media. I didn't understand like Instagram and Facebook and websites, and every single decision. The placement is on my website. And my website, by the way, is not perfect, and it's probably a little bit slow. And
the hundreds and hundreds of, you know, the followers, everyone you have, you're giving these women the media attention they deserve that they don't always get in the mainstream at all. It's really important.
Yeah. And it is. I think it's amazing when you can look back on the journey and just see like, wow, I started, you know, with these 4 interviews, and now there's over 220, and you can see them in the stories, and now it's built this momentum, and it's this incredible sort of machine, and it is causing this ripple effect. And, you know, to hit 1 million is I'm very proud of that. I am very proud.
Very good, greatest achievement to have. Next question, number 7. What is your motto?
What is my motto? If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. So I am a big believer in like helping for you to grow and develop as a person. You've got to step outside your comfort zone. You've got to do those things that scare you and excite you. So if it can challenge you and you go out and do it, it's going to help you grow and develop. It's not necessarily about completing the goal. It's about going on that journey to finishing it.
What is your greatest regret?
My greatest regret is that I didn't start doing what I'm doing sooner.
I think that's for everyone, yeah.
Yeah, like I wish I had the strength when I was 23 or 24 to not follow the traditional path, to not just go with the flow and follow my friends from university down to London. I wish I'd been able to break out of that mold, and I wish I knew that was an option, that I could do it. I just didn't know that women could lead these lives and do these incredible challenges. And I look back now and I wish I could have started Tough Girl Challenges when I was still working, then getting this regular pay pack in. And then to think where I'd be if I'd started it 4 years ago and this was coming into its 10th year, you know, that would have been incredible. But I sometimes think of that, but obviously I know that I can't make any of those changes, but I'm aware of that.
You did that, you got there, and there's some woman, young girl out there watching you, hopefully then going, right, I'm doing it now. So you're shaving off decades for other women.
Good.
And number 9, penultimate question. Which historical figure do you most identify with?
Oh, Eleanor Roosevelt is somebody who I absolutely, it's so weird. She wrote this book, and obviously I'm not going to be able to remember the name of the book. It was about leadership, like Eleanor Roosevelt style of her leadership. And the book just really spoke to me about what she did, how she operated, what she persevered through, the challenges that she faced, and what she learned a lot along the way. And I don't know, she's just a real figure of somebody who I really do respect a lot. And I went through her book, and I like, you know, I go through and like highlight, and then it's like all my favorite quotes and everything.
You are organised.
And then I type them up, so I've got like all of the list, and then those like, so I've got like summary notes that I made from the book, which I like just reading. Just every once in a while, I'll come.
Did you need a reminder, don't you?
Yeah, and you just think, yeah, she was a hugely inspirational lady. Yeah.
And last question: how would you like to die?
I'm just thinking fulfilled. Like I don't know, almost like ready to go, like just ready for the next challenge, ready for the next adventure. No, I just think happy and content, and just knowing that I've made a difference. I think that'd be lovely. Yeah.
You're certainly on your way, I'd say, to making a difference.
Yeah. Ready to move on.
So if people want to get in touch, they want to follow, where's the best place for them to go to?
Go to the main website, toughguychallenges.com. That's the main hub, and through there you can find links to the podcast, the books, the website, all my social media channels. Come and follow me on Instagram stories, because then you'll just get to see how crazy my life is. You also get to meet my parents as well and show you what life is like living with them. They are hysterical, they're very funny.
Become a patron. Come on, what else are you going to spend that money on? Not your latte, spend it with Sarah. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh no, thank you so much, I've really enjoyed it.